This class is brought to you by the LA Care and Blue Shield Promise Community Resource Centers. The centers are a place to help you be active, healthy, and informed. We hope you enjoy this virtual class.
Hi, my name is Charmaine Vega, also known as Mama Vega. Today's cooking demonstration is on how to make hummus from garbanzo beans, which is sometimes called chickpeas. The origins of hummus. Did you know the word hummus means chickpea in Arabic? Did you know the earliest mention of hummus dates back to Egypt in the 13th century? The Greeks and Egyptians did a lot of trading, which would explain how both cultures have several cuisine dishes in common. One, namely hummus. The measuring cup on the left is 1.5 cups of dried garbanzo beans, and the measuring cup on the right is the same 1.5 garbanzo beans covered with water up to the 4-cup line.
Yesterday, I took 1.5 cups of garbanzo beans and I put them in a container or another measuring cup that measures 4 cups. And I had already rinsed them with cold water, rinsed them with hot water, and then I covered them with hot water all the way to the top, although it was only 1.5 cups of the garbanzo beans. And then I wrapped it in this towel overnight after covering it with saran wrap. So I covered it with saran wrap. And now I'm going to show you how it came out. This is what you call the reveal. And now these are the garbanzo beans. And what you see on top, this white that you see on top, is actually all of the starches and everything that have foamed up. And you can see that right now I have this, which is the saran wrap, which I can take off. And you can see that here, and if you were here and you could feel this, you would see it's wet where some of the stuff is actually drained down to this. And if I take this and turn it sideways, and without spilling it, be able to show you a little bit, you can see how this is. It's all foam all on the top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and dump this off, and then I'm going to rinse them, and then I'll show you what that is. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this actually says 4 cups or a quart. It shows you right here that it's saying a quart or 4 cups, and you can see how much foam it generated. If you didn't soak these, this is all the stuff that you would have in it, and you'll also see that I'm going to dump it out, and when I dump it out, all of that's in there, and you can see that there's still foam on the rim. So you would have been cooking all of that into your food. And where it originally started, it started down here at 1.5 cups. Now it's up to 4 cups. So that's how much it's swollen. It's swollen up to that much. So I'm going to set this aside. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the water. And I'm going to actually rinse all of these off. And I'm going to rinse it with cold water. I'm going to turn on the cold water to rinse as much of this off as I can. And I'm going to keep doing them so that now what I can do is get all of this, and then I'll move it around so that we get as much of that foam off of it as possible. That's what we're going to do here. So we see that it's all rinsed off. Now that I've completely rinsed them, I have a pot, and I put the pot in the sink that is completely clean, so in case I spill any, I won't spill it all over the countertop, and you can see that. And here you see that they're all in a very clean pot, so I'm going to put them in the pot. And then what I'm going to do is I have water. I did get 4 cups of water, but I'm not sure that I'll need all 4 cups because I'm going to pour it until I cover all of the beans. So I'll see how much water I need until it gets covered. And it looks like I need the full 4 cups of water. So I have the 4 cups of water, and then what I will do is I will start these to cook. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like when I put it on the stove. It's not quite a rapid boil just yet, but you can see that it's still going to have a film on top. So that film that's developing on top is still more starch coming out, and that's what you want to take off. And here I got one of my red bowls so I can show you how you skim it off. So you skim that off and you just keep doing it. And this is going to keep, this is where, you know, they say a watch pot never boils, but in this instance, a watch pot does boil, and you want to make sure that you get all of this off. And it's going to keep, you're going to keep doing this until it's not foaming anymore. And then at that point, what I do is I rinse it again, and then I will cover it with fresh water, and then I can start the cooking process. But I can't do that until I get all of this off. So you see how much is coming out. Look, that would be more starch. Now remember, we already got the starch off by soaking it. So now we're taking more off, and I'm going to keep doing this until I get it all completely off, and then I'll rinse it again. So I'll get back to you. Look at how much is still in there. This is just 1 spoonful I just took out. Look at how much that is. And when you go in here, you can see. And what you want to do is you want to try to get it as quickly as you can so that it doesn't dissipate with the air, because sometimes what happens is it dissipates in the air, but you want to just scoop it off to make sure it doesn't go back in there. So one of the things I do is I do this, and then I cover it up to bring it back to a boil again, and then I open the lid real fast. So in order for me to do that, I have to put you on pause while I go and do that. Okay, you can see it's at a rapid boil now, and I don't have any more foam or anything like that that's coming off of it. So what I'll do is I'll take this and I will then rinse it off again, so that if there's any kind of starches that are kind of down in the water itself, even though I don't see any foam, I will get that part off as well. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to rinse it. Okay, now these have been rinsed, so I'm going to put water on it again. So I'm going to add more water to it, and that's about 4 cups again. And then I'm going to bring this back to a boil again. I'm going to turn that on so it'll come to a boil. So I'm putting the heat up high so it'll come to a boil. And then when this one comes to a boil this time, I don't have to worry about the starches or anything coming off. But what I do now is I'm going to add 2 bay leaves to it. And the reason I add, and these are fresh bay leaves. You see it's not brown or anything. These are fresh. What's very interesting is I got them fresh from the store. And although I put them in the refrigerator, they got a little bit, stiff, but you see they're still green. So these have a different flavor than the ones that you get in the store when they're dehydrated and they're in the containers. You don't know how long it's been there. You don't know any of that stuff. So I prefer to get these fresh ones. And you can see these leaves are kind of big. These are nice big leaves, which is what I like. And I put it down in here because what happens is when it comes to a boil, that will go in, and that helps to prevent the flatulence or the gas, whichever way you want to look at it. So when you eat these, they won't give you the gas because you would have taken all of those starches out, and that foam that you take out, those are the starches that's very difficult for your body to absorb. And that's why, the enzymes in your stomach is having a difficult time breaking it down. So what I'll do now is I'm going to put the lid on this, bring it to a boil, and then we'll finish the cooking. Okay, you see I brought this to a rapid boil, and you don't see the foam and stuff forming on it. And I'm going to show you how soft these leaves are. See, if I'm pushing it down, you see how they bend in half? That goes to show you that the oils and stuff that are in these, it's actually exuding and coming out into the water, which is what you want. And by the way, when I poured that other water off, that other water was yellow, so that means it still had some stuff in it. And if you look at this water now, you can see this water is clear. So that means I've gotten all of that starches off. So it's important also to pour the other water off. After you finish doing all that, you want to pour that water off, put fresh water on, and the water I put on was cold water. And now you can bring these to a boil again, and I'm going to take these leaves, since they're nice and soft, I can push them down in there so that they're inside everything, and that means they're going to be underneath, and they'll be able to cook and get all of the nutrients and stuff that's in there that's going to help prevent the flatulence from you from getting that. So we're going to go ahead and let these cook, and then while these are cooking, I'm going to get the rest of the ingredients out that I'm going to use to make the hummus. Okay, I'm going to tell you the ingredients that I'm going to use. I have olive oil, I have a Celtic sea salt, I have a Meyer lemon, which is a sweet lemon. I have a bell pepper. It's almost a full bell pepper. I just wanted to open it up to make sure it was all good on the inside, and I wanted to eat a little bit of it, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I also have some garlic, and I have my garlic press, and then I have some onions. I haven't cut that up just yet. I also have a sweet paprika. I have a hot paprika, and I have sumac. Sumac is usually what you put on to give it that red coloring that you'll see often on top of the hummus. But if you want that little red coloring and you want a little bit of flavor, you can add paprika. And if you want it sweet, you can add sweet, or you can do hot. Or if you prefer, you can do chili pepper, the ground chili peppers, and you can sprinkle that on top. I don't know which ones I'll use when I finally end up doing it, because I want to look at the flavor. And then I also have, this is the tahini paste, and that's what actually gives it the flavoring that you're looking for. That's what makes it the hummus that everybody loves to eat. And hummus is actually made from sesame seeds. And you can take sesame seeds, soak them, add a little bit of water to them, ground them up, and you will, or grind them up, and then you will end up with the paste. And this is what this is. This is a tahini paste, and you can see this is a raw tahini paste, so it has no oils, nothing else added to it. It's just the paste itself, and this one is organic, and my seeds are also organic. I'm going to use my lemon juicer when I do my juice, or my citrus juicer rather, and I will use it to take all the juices out of the lemon. What I do want to tell you is that the only thing that I'm going to cook here after I get my beans done is I'm going to cook the onion, and I'm going to cook the garlic. I know sometimes when you buy tahini in the store, or the hummus in the store, you see it says roasted bell peppers and everything. You need to know that anytime you heat your vitamin C, which is what this will have, as well as your lemon juice, both of these are high in vitamin C. Whenever you do that, it destroys the quality of the vitamin C that you're going to get. So for the purposes of what I do, is I like to make sure I get as many nutrients as I can. So I will chop this up. It'll be chopped up very tiny and very fine, and I will mix it in, but I will not cook it, and it will not be roasted. It's going to be raw, is what it's going to be. And then the olive oil that I have over here, if you are 100% plant-based, you would not add the olive oil, which is an organic olive oil. That's actually an organic olive oil. And so are my garlic. My garlic is organic, and so are my onions. And that's because once I finish making this, I'll end up giving it to my daughter, who would want it. I eat it too, and I do eat organic. So whether or not I put the oil in, I won't probably put the oil in mine. So I'll divide it in half, and I'll give her half, and I'll keep half. Hers I'll add the oil to, and mine I won't. But that's to show you, here are the ingredients and how they go in. How much you put in is usually a matter of taste, so you'll be tasting it as you go along. I'm using a half an onion. I'll use probably 3 to 5 of the cloves of garlic, and that's because I like a lot of garlic, because the garlic and the onions serve as a prebiotic. I talked about that in one of my other classes, and what it does is it helps your stomach and the flora in your stomach to produce enough of the fertilizer, so to speak, so that your probiotics will have something to eat, which gives you the good biome, or the good bacteria in your gut, so that you can digest your food properly. So these two ingredients actually help your body to digest the food that it needs, and so does the vitamin C, which is why I'm going to leave it the way that it is. It helps you to further break down the proteins that you will now have in the beans. Because remember, we've gotten rid of as much of the starch that we can, and what's in the beans now is going to be the protein that you can get from it. So that's what I'm going to do in there. Since the the seeds that you have, the sesame seeds, those are a source of nutrients as well, and you'll be able to get the full benefit of everything. I happen to use Celtic sea salt because it doesn't have the iodine and all the other things that they tell you that might, or not iodine, sodium. It doesn't have the sodium that often people complain about. And again, although I know that's what it does, do your own research and research Celtic sea salt in comparison to Himalayan salt and some of the others, and then you use whatever salt you feel most comfortable with. I choose to use Celtic sea salt, and Celtic sea salt is very, very, very salty, so you only need to use a pinch. You see sometimes when people are cooking and then they just use a pinch and then they just throw it on and you go, well, that's all the salt they put in. Well, that's how this salt is. You only need a little bit, and it's very healthy for you. I like a lot of garlic, so I decided that I broke it apart. I still have some left over, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use like maybe 7. I have one big one and then I have these small ones, but I like to make sure I'm using a lot of garlic. So I'll end up smashing these using my garlic press, which is what this is. You put the garlic down in this part of it right here, and then you close the handle down on it, and then when you press it down, they come out on the other end. And then after it comes out, you take this and you can push it back the other way, and then it'll push all of that out and you can clean it out, and then you're ready for the next one. I'm going to show you something with the garlic that I had. You can see where it has the little green that's coming out of the top. That shows you it was going to try to start sprouting. And one of the things you can do is, especially if it's the organic one, you see how this is right here. If you take this and set it down in water, it will start growing roots, and then you can break them apart and you can start growing them. What I did is I happened to put mine in this little cup so it wouldn't fall all the way down in there. And you can see that this one, I was able to get it to start growing. And I have some friends, and what I did is I started these for them and then I gave them out as little gifts. And now what they can do is they can start their own, and you take this whole thing, put it in the ground, and then it will create another bulb. And from that bulb, you can take 1 or 2 from that, and then you can start it going, so that you can always have fresh garlic if you want to do this. It didn't take long for it to start growing all these roots, and now you can either continue to grow it in water, or what you can do is you can plant it in a pot. And because these have so many little bulbs or little cloves on one bulb, and when you buy it, you buy multiple bulbs, and then you use 1 or 2 bulbs in order to start more growing. Just so you know, from measurement purposes, the garlic that I use comes out to about 1 tablespoon. Now the beans are still cooking, but what I'm going to do over here on another burner is I took some of the water from the beans, which is what I did. You can see it's a little bit yellow, but rather than me using fresh water, which is going to take away more flavor, I like to keep flavor in, and when it's all done and said, that water, I'm going to end up throwing it away. So rather than just wasting everything, I like to use as much of it as I can. And sometimes what I do is I save that water because we've gotten rid of the starches, and I might use that water, add it with more water if I'm going to cook some rice or something. So I'm not wasting my water, and I'm not wasting any of the nutrients or whatever that would have come out of the water. Because remember, we still have the bay leaf in there. And even when I cook rice, sometimes I leave the bay leaf in and then I just cook using that. So I'm going to add this over here, and then I'm going to add a lid to it, and then I'm going to let this simmer so that these can simmer down. So this is going to be the only other thing I'm going to cook beside the beans. Everything else is going to be raw. I squeezed the 1 lemon, and that came out to about maybe 2 ounces of juice. But one of the things I'm going to show you, a trick that I do, is I take the lemon rinds and I save them, whether it's lemon, grapefruit, whatever the citrus is, and then I freeze them like this. I put them in a bag and I freeze them. And then when I want to have some type of water, I take the peeling and I put it in my water, and I put it in the refrigerator and soak it. And so now I have some type of juice or water that's flavored. Now I'm going to take a look at the garlic and onions, and you can see how that is. You can see how it's more like a pate right now, where it's all cooked down. And I only used for this what I have. I just used the 2 ounces of water, but or it wasn't water, it was the juice from the beans. Because I put the lid on, it kept all the moisture, and I didn't have to add any more liquid to it. And so now we can let that sit. We can go back to our beans and we'll see that they were a little tender. I've already tasted some, and I could see that it was nice and tender. So these should be ready. And my leaves, I'm going to show you how tender these are. You see, I can even put a fork through the leaves. When you get the dried ones, you can't do that same thing. But right now you can see the fork actually goes all the way completely through. And so I know that the oils from this have seeped into the water, and I still have the water that's within this, and I will end up reserving this water in case I'm going to use it for something else. But you can see how the fork also went through the bean. So the bean is actually ready. I've now chopped up all the red bell pepper, and this is what it looks like. You can see that it's pretty fine what I did. It's very fine, and I did chop it up. I didn't put it in a blender because that might make it, have less texture, and it'll be too smooth, and we already have something that's going to be smooth, and that's going to be the garbanzo beans. Once we blend them, they're going to be very smooth, and you can either use a blender or you can use a food processor. I'm actually going to use a blender because my daughter needed to use my food processor, so she has my food processor. Remember, I want to keep the water so I can use it later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spoon these out, because if I drain it, I may get rid of too much of the water, and I'm just going to put them in here. Some people, rather than doing these whole, if you want to take the skins off, they will sit and take the skins off. But because I cook them long enough, when I blend it, I will blend it long enough for my skin that comes off of the bean to be very soft as well. So it'll be blended in and that'll be smooth. And then what I'll do is I'll also add the garlic and onions, and I will blend that into it as well. But for right now, I'm going to add all the beans in here, and then I will blend those up. And I'm going to show you now, all the beans are in here. I have all the beans there. And then here's the juice that was left. And I'll take that and add it to a jar and save it. So that I don't spill the juice everywhere, I'm going to take this and I put a little funnel on top of it, and I'm going to add it to that, and look at that. I end up having about 16 ounces, 2 cups, so pretty much it ended up absorbing about 3 cups of water, because when it was cooking, it cooked down a little bit, and I added 1 more cup to it to make sure it stayed covered with the water while it was cooking. So this ends up being 2 cups. That's in here. So we have 2 cups. So the beans themselves absorbed a total of 3 cups. Okay, I blended it, and I'm going to show you what it looks like now. So now these are the beans that have blended. Okay, you see how those are looking? So that's blended really well. But because they were kind of thick to start with, I used half of the juice that I had retained. So you see why it's also important to retain that juice rather than throwing it away, because if you had to add water to it, that would dilute your flavor and it would make it watery. You're not going to have as much flavor in it. And so here I used half of what I had retained. So that's approximately 1 cup that I ended up adding back into it so that it would blend smoothly. Now here's my onions that have cooked down. And so my onions and garlic, because those are all cooked, so I'm going to add that now into it as well. And then we'll blend that in. Now I'm going to add, for this amount, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of the tahini paste, which is sesame seeds. And then I'm going to blend this down and see how that tastes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer everything back into the pot so that it gives me more room to be able to stir in my seasonings as well as the bell peppers. So that's what I'm going to do at this point. Okay, now I'm going to add some of the bell pepper to it. So I'm going to take about half, and then I'll mix that in and see how that looks. And then I'll decide whether or not I want to add more. I decided that what I'm going to do is add the other half, because I thought it could use a little bit more in there, just based on how it looked. I haven't tasted it, but based on how it looks, I think I want to add the rest of it. So I added the full bell pepper to it. Here's what it looks like after I've added in the red bell pepper. So that's what that looks like. I'm now going to add the lemon juice. I'm going to shake in a little bit of the paprika. I used the paprika that has a little bit of spice in it. This is the hot paprika, and that's just because I wanted a little bit of kick to mine. And then I'm going to add the Celtic sea salt, but like I said, you don't add a lot of it because it is quite salty, although it has a lot of health benefits. So that's what I'm going to do there. And then we're all done with the preparation, and then I'll spoon it out and put it in a bowl so you can see it. Here's the end product. And I did put a little bit of olive oil in the center of it, and I sprinkled a little bit of the hot paprika on top. And those little breads there are called naan bites. So instead of it being the big naan loaf, they're called naan bites. So they're little ones. Instead of crackers, you can do this. If you want crackers, you can use crackers. You can use carrots, or French fries if you want French fries, but rather than frying them, you can bake them. Or you can use celery sticks, any type of vegetable. You can use that as a dip rather than using a bread. And as Mama Vega always says, now chew on this.
Thank you so much for joining me. We look forward to seeing you virtually again next week and at one of our resource centers as soon as we can. Until then, stay active, healthy, and informed. Here's an important message for you. All information, content, and material of this video is for informational purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider. The information contained on this video is compiled from a variety of sources and is not considered complete. Information is subject to change without notice. If you have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately.